Oxford from the inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan and welcome to this episode of Oxford from the Inside, the good, the bad, but always the truth. Today we're joined by Ruoh. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Okay, fair enough. I'm Ruoh Yang. I graduated from Trinity College in the year 2020. So yeah, this is gonna be a bit different, seeing that I'm a recent grad rather than an actual current student. But I hope my experience can be shared and you gain something from this.
Thank you for joining us. And as you can probably guess, we're going to be talking about engineering, all about engineering, your specialty subject, you might say.
Read from the title.
And to kick this off, just talking a bit generally, how is the engineering course structured and what is it like?
Okay, so at least in Oxford and Cambridge, this applies to both. The engineering course is more general. They don't really go. So no matter what you apply for, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, aeronautical engineering, you will always end up in the same general engineering course, at least for the first 2 years. So all the engineers in Oxford and in Cambridge would have the same curriculum for the first 2 years. And in your third and fourth years, then you get to pick a certain number of specializations, a certain number of courses that interest you a bit more. For example, I took biomedical and electronics, and I stayed away from civil engineering because in my first 2 years, it was just like, yeah, this is not for me. So that's the nice thing, you get a taster of what it'll be actually like to further your studies in that particular segment. So,
Yeah, it's and is that a reason why you chose to do this engineering course, because you got to taste everything?
For me personally, no, but I have known a couple of students who had decided to go into Oxford or Cambridge kind of specifically for that. For me personally, though, it was very useful because I came in thinking, okay, I'm dead set on doing aeronautics or mechanical engineering, something along those lines. And I ended up choosing, like I said, biomed and electronics, which I would not have had even thought about unless I had done for 2 years in that course. So yeah, pros and cons,
Yeah, definitely. If you're dead set on one type, then you have to do all the others. But
yeah, exactly. So in a way, it made my first 2 years a bit more harsh in some modules because, like I said, I disliked civil engineering a lot. So it ended up being like, whenever I had to do civil engineering work, it was like, oh God. But the rest of the work was more, depending on electronics work, I loved it. And then, it's a trade. You get something you want, some things you want, some things you don't.
Yeah, and of course that'd be the same for all subjects. You can't like everything that you do. And why did you choose to do engineering just generally as a course? Why did you want to do engineering?
For engineering specifically, it was mainly because I kind of, the cliche, I liked mechanical things since I was young. I would much rather fiddle with mechanical stuff than actually talk to most people. So that kind of like just set my mind towards it, and I kind of just stuck with it. The other thing that kind of drew me to engineering in particular, rather than any other, let's say, physics or hard sciences of the like, was air crash investigation. I think that's what you guys would call it. Funnily enough, I like seeing how things fail so catastrophically. So it was one of those things that were like, while I like seeing things blow up, maybe let's try to help make things a little less blow up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great program, by the way. Even if you don't like engineering, it's a great.
Oh yes, actually do. Yes, it's lovely.
It's a great time. And I mean, I don't know if there is such thing as a normal week, but within the course, what would it look like?
Okay, so at least the normal week, as Megan and you have said, would happen more so in your first and second years. So in your first and second years, like I said, is a general curriculum. general engineering curriculum, to be more specific, you have a very set schedule in terms of lectures and in terms of labs. So you have about 8 hours of lectures a week. Yes, that's right. And 5 hours of labs every week for the most part. And tutorials they're assigned, the timings are done by your tutor. So in my case, with Trinity College, they were very structured. So you will have 2 a week without fail. And then if let's say the tutor thinks that, oh, well, for this particular chapter, none of the engineers at Trinity in our year will quite adapt with it, then you'll have additional tutorials with that. And that's kind of how the week goes. It's just like, go into a lecture, come out, and if you have labs, you go to labs. If you have tutorial, go to do your tutorials. If not, then you do some work, participate in some social activities, things of that nature. I'm sure you guys have seen from OFTI that they have quite a few societies to choose from. So do your thing.
Thank you. Plug for all the other episodes on other societies. And in a tutorial, is that problem sheet based mostly?
Yes, for engineering it is. So what we tend to do is they will have given you for each subject per se, it's not subject. So for each chapter, they will give you a problem sheet to do, and you'll have to complete as much as you can prior to actually going to the tutorial. So it'll be kind of like the tutorial is for engineering at the very least is a brush up on what you have learned, what you don't understand, and it's a discussion place for that kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah, and so we have mentioned this before, but obviously, as you said, you do as much of the sheet as you can. They will add very challenging questions on there that you can't necessarily do, but you talk through them and you go through them in the tutorial to understand how to do them.
Yeah, exactly. So don't worry. I mean, I would just say don't really worry if you can't finish it all, as long as you actually made the attempt to try to finish it all.
Yeah, absolutely. The tutors don't mind as long as you're trying.
Yep.
And talking a bit more about labs, maybe. How are your labs structured? What do you do in your labs?
Okay, so for engineering, they would kind of like at this, they will give you your lab sheets, or I forgot what the term is called, but then it's like all the essential knowledge you need to know for that lab. They'll give it to you, and it's often linked to the chapters that you're studying in lectures at the moment, or sometimes even slightly ahead, depending on when your labs are scheduled. But what they'll do is try to link that to a practical application, and you go in. There's some set questions that you have to have answered by the end, and that's kind of the goal of the lab. You go in there, you need to answer these questions using an experimental setup, or in one particular case, it was the goal was to build a bridge. Very, very typical stuff, but you need to build a bridge of these certain dimensions using these materials. You have to, try to minimize its weight, maximize the amount of force it can withstand, and things along that nature. So, it's a optimization thing.
Yeah, and then a lot of other subjects you have kind of demonstrators in the lab who would help you as well. Is that something you have for engineering, or are you mostly working in your groups or on your own?
So it's more often than not, it'll be group based, unless that's it's when I say group, it's not going to be like a very big group. It's normally going to be like 2 people, you and your lab partner, just trying to solve some stuff. Sometimes you'll be like a group of 3 or 4, but those are a bit more rare. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. And does that change in the later years? Are you in
Not
groups
really.
the whole time, or they're pretty consistent?
It's pretty consistent. It's the same thing throughout. Just that the topics get a bit more interesting as the years go on. But then again, it's because at the same time, you actually chose your subject. So
Yeah.
I personally felt it was just like, oh yeah, obviously this is more interesting to me than, I don't know, bridge building.
Yeah, because you have a lot more choice then.
Yeah, exactly.
Slightly more, I don't know, scary topic perhaps, is then exams. How is the engineering course examined? Because it can vary quite a lot subject by subject.
Yes, that's true. So from as an engineering student at Oxford, what you will be facing is kind of just like written exams at the end of at the end of every year. First year is a prelims, doesn't count towards your finals, but you might as well try to do well in that. Then in your second through fourth year, all your written finals will count towards your actual final mark. I know this is not the case for some humanities subjects, but this is how it works for engineering. So what tends to happen is that in your second year, it'll be completely written papers. Yeah. In your third year, there will be written papers and also project work to do. So you have two projects. One, hopefully they would not have changed it, but one computing project and one design project. So the design project is about 4 or 5 people in the group. The computing project is solo. And in your fourth year, that's the dissertation year. So it's basically going to be 50-50 between your split. The marks weightage is going to be split kind of evenly between your written papers and your dissertation.
And how do you go about, what choice do you have about your dissertation topics? How do you go about choosing that?
Okay, yeah, that's a good thing you mentioned that. So for your fourth year dissertation, you could propose a topic. That's perfectly fine. So if you have a topic in mind, you can, like some of my friends did, they were like, okay, so I have this thing that I think might be an interesting topic to research further. Then they'll just go up to a professor that they think, who is in that field, who they think would probably be interested in holding another dissertation project, because a couple of these professors will be working on a few projects at the same time. So you could go up to them and say, hey, I've got this project here are the details, this is what I'm aiming for, would you be willing to supervise me? And if they say sure, all's good. If not, there will be a selection to choose from. The selection changes every year because once a project gets done, that the professors will kind of move on and try to build on that project. Or if let's say that the results are very on the negative side, they'll just cut it there and then. Let's stop worrying about it. But yeah, so it's just like but there will be a list to choose from, and you have to kind of like pick 5, if I recall correctly, pick 5, and you'll get selected for one of the 5.
Okay, yeah. So it's sort of, is that something, do supervisors select based on marks, or is it kind of the conversations that you've had with them?
This is unknown to me.
Fair
Though
enough.
I have heard that they said that if the supervisor knows you very well and thinks that you're a good fit, they are more likely to choose you, select you for that. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I am not very privy to the details about selecting.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a supervisor, so you can't give me the gossip. And I mean, I feel like that summarized most of the degree itself.
Yeah, generally.
Yeah, and do you have a favorite part? What would you say the best bit of the degree is?
So I'm not sure if this showed up in other interviews, but for me, it was mainly the people I've met. So it's just like, they were very helpful. A lot of them were helpful. They were very very devoted to the subject, a lot of them. So it was just like, it was nice being around all these kind of people, and it helped me kind of motivate myself to work a bit more. And in terms of the subject itself, it was, it was a good subject. I wouldn't say that I've selected wrongly, but I can't quite pick out like, oh, this is definitely the best bit. It's, to me, it's
Sure.
about the same, except for civil engineering. Yeah, let's not go there.
Other people might enjoy civil engineering, but
Yes, and if you do, that's fair enough. I have a friend who loves civil engineering. She did not understand why I was so adamant against it. So we never really talked about work after that. It was just like, yeah, let's stray away from that. We have a lot more else in common. Let's talk about those
Yeah.
instead.
And do you get to meet a lot of different people from other colleges during the degree?
Oh yes. So at least in my experience, you will meet the kind of groups of people you will meet would be your course mates, people who do the same course as you do, the college mates, people who are in the same college regardless of whatever subject they do, and you have your society mates, kind of just like a random mishmash of everything that just so happens to be in that society. That's kind of the three groups that you would have met throughout Oxford. So yeah, in terms of meeting people in your own cohort, if you decide to like form a study group or like do something of that sort, then you'll get to know them better. Otherwise, though at the same time, there's a lot of chatter when we are waiting outside and we'll all be for the lectures. It's just like, oh, what have you been up to? You want to go out and grab a coffee after, things happen. So
and it's you are recently graduated. Congrats on graduating.
Thank you.
But that means it's great because we can talk about careers after an engineering degree. So could you maybe give a little summary of what you do at the moment and what other possibilities might be?
So, as a lot of my course-mates would jokingly said, I have betrayed my subject and I'm now in the world of finance, working as exactly. So, yeah, I just kind of, I was just thinking to myself, why the hell not? I'm a fresh grad. Times are a bit tough recently, so just try to dip my fingers into any sector I possibly could, and hey, this is the first place that offered me a job, so I just took it.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, so if you do engineering, you don't necessarily have to do engineering in the future, or something hard science like. Out of a lot of the friends that I know, quite a few. So there's one of my friends, the one I said earlier, the civil engineering girl. She's right now doing project management in a different company, working on actually engineering projects. But according to her, it's more so management than engineering. But at least she finds it useful that having an engineering background actually allows her to understand what they're talking about. And then I have a friend who became a teacher. I've got a couple of friends doing PhDs. So it's just like, it's a mixed match of stuff. Funnily enough, I don't personally know anyone actually doing engineering. I'm sure there's bound to be. There's 150 of us in my year. There is bound to be at least one, but I just don't know them personally, I guess.
But there's an otherwise very broad range of career.
Oh yeah, very broad range. Yeah.
You don't have to do engineering, as you said. You can do what you want to do, and
a lot of consultants.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. It just so happens.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm still mystified about what consulting is. Maybe that should be another episode.
Maybe actually get somebody who's actually doing consulting work right now and be like, actually, what do you guys do?
I still don't understand. But you could do that if you know what it is. You can do that.
Yes, don't but if you're clueless like me, try to at least understand what you're going to do before you actually apply, because otherwise you'll make a fool of yourself, like I did in my interviews when one of them asked. So at the end of everything, he was just like, do you actually know what consulting work entails? I'm like, no. Yeah, it was not great. Let's put it that way.
At least you were honest. At
Yeah.
least you're honest.
I mean, at that point, I was thinking I probably fluked that interview anyway, so I might as well be honest.
Oh dear. So I'm just checking everything. Degree, we've talked about degree. We've talked about your career. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe considering applying for engineering or who want to do engineering and are considering Oxford? Is there anything you would have wanted to know or you think would be useful?
One of the things for Oxford in particular, make sure you actually know who's going to be tutoring you to a certain degree. So it's like at least know, like I would suggest before you apply to, I guess this works for any subject. Before you apply to Oxford or Cambridge, because you're going to have a lot of direct contact with the faculty. I would kind of just suggest that you at least read up their background. What are they working on? Are they what inclinations are they in? So like for engineering, taking engineering as an example, my head tutor was more in the electric kind of things, and a couple of my other tutors were more in the material science departments. So it's one of those things where, just at the very least, do some cursory take a cursory glance, because at the end of the day, let's just say hypothetically that in this college all the tutors do material sciences, right? Then remember, okay, so I guess I need to bring this up. You technically have four modules to speak of. One is a maths module, then there's the civil and material science, that's one module. Electronics and electrical, that's one module. And anything to do with energy or mechanical systems, that's one module. So that's four modules in total. So if it so happens, which I don't think this will happen, but hypothetically speaking, if all the tutors are from the material science, civil background, then they are less, okay, I wouldn't want to speak ill of them, but so it'll be a lot harder for them to tutor, let's say mechanical engineering, the module. So it will just be, it'll be slightly more beneficiary if you are going, especially if you like mechanical engineering, or at least you think you want to do mechanical engineering, make sure that you at least you won't be left out completely blindsided like that. That's the only advice I kind of would want to bring out. In terms of advice to apply for engineering in particular, not really. If from what I have seen, most people whom want to study engineering or are quite firm in it, they are either, might be a flip-flop of engineering physics or engineering or one of the hard sciences. But just think about, would you be more, could you picture yourself just more in theoretical academic standpoint, or thinking about that kind of thing? So, so for example, would you be more inclined towards physics, or would you be more inclined towards, like, let's just say mechanical engineering? They're similar to a certain extent, but if you can't picture yourself working with like building actual machineries to operate, and are more comfortable with, just thinking about things from a theoretical point of view, maybe physics is more your thing, but vice versa, it goes whichever whichever way it flows.
Yeah, and I mean, as we've been saying, you don't have to do engineering even if you do engineering, but it's important that you enjoy the subject that you're applying for.
The one thing, actually, so it's from my experience, from the people I've talked to, there are a lot of people who transition from, let's say, a physics degree into an engineering job. It's much rarer to see somebody go from engineering to physics, but it is possible. I have met people who did their undergrad in engineering, but their PhD or doctorate were in physics. So it is possible, don't get me wrong, but it's much less common. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah. And I don't know if there are any specific things that helped you just very briefly, because I'm sure we'll have a full episode, but briefly, when you were applying, when you were interviewing, was there any advice in particular that really helped you?
So the thing I would like to say about the interviews is, I'm sure this has been said many times before. It's there to test your suitability and also your how well. Basically, it's there to test how well you suit a tutorial rather than to test your actual intelligence. Because for the most part, yeah. So anybody who applies to Oxford and Cambridge would be, to a certain extent, confident in their own abilities to do work. So they have that part covered. The rest is about how well would you be suited for an Oxford or Cambridge tutorial supervision. I have known some brilliant people who didn't get an offer from Oxford, but then again, I could at least from my experiences, I could tell why those guys were very quiet. It's like, so even when you prompt them, they are very unlikely to actually answer, answer out loud. And so I can understand why they didn't really make it. But at the end of the day, they are very brilliant, smart people. They've done really very well in other universities as well. Don't get me wrong. It's just that the way Oxford likes to do things would be a strain on them mentally. So, it's best for both parties to not really push it forward.
Yeah. So it has been said before, but it is very important to say again. Talk your way through everything. You will be prompted. The tutors will try to help you in the interview and tell them what you're thinking, because that's all they want, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part. And the other thing I would like to say is that if you are very, feel very, if you don't feel confident in your own application, just know this: I fell asleep in my own interview. Time difference hurts a lot. I decided to actually take the flight to Oxford to interview there. Seeing at the time I was just like, hey, I'm not going to get in. Might as well go see what it's like. Go on holiday. Why not? So it's just like, go there. The time difference, 8-hour time difference is not fun. And it was just like, by the afternoon interview session for me, I was just dozing off in and out. It's just like in that interview, I wouldn't say I slept, but I kind of just dozed off, not dozed off, blanked out completely. Or just like, yeah, mine's not working, just not interpreting words, and just like, so what do you think of this? Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's very interesting. Can you give me a minute to think about it? Oh God, what did you say? What did you say? Oh God. So yeah. If I can make it through, I'm sure you guys can too.
Inspiring, thank you.
In a weird way, yes.
You could doze off in your interview and make it through. You'll be fine.
Somehow.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And obviously, congrats again. You got a job, you've graduated. In this market is a miracle.
Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, thank you so much, Ruoh Yang, for joining us, and thank you to everyone who's watching this or listening to this. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Oxford from the Inside if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.